that I'm in, I'm always by myself, and I have to wonder and worry about how's my safety. Even though I'm a an experienced backcountry person, but I also have to look at like my safety, and sometimes there's a fear when I see certain things that happens. So I had experiences of coming out and from doing 2 or 3 days in the back country, coming out and my brake lines dismantled out of my vehicle. Certain things like that will happen with notes saying you're not wanted here, notes saying get out. I've also had experiences being on the river, fly fishing, and the most worst scenario that actually triggered so much because me as a combat vet, which I had to go through a heavy, heavy, deep process, is that I had a guy, a Caucasian male, that basically yelled at me and said, "Get off my river." That was a very hard thing for me to actually digest that, because we don't own rivers, right? These rivers are for everyone. But he said, "Get off my river," and then I choose not to get off the river because I wanted to actually hold on to my space and try to fly fish. Again, this is my time as a combat vet, and I'm trying to seek out a place for healing, right? That's what the outdoors are supposed to do for us all. So I'm trying to seek that out, but let alone, since I made that choice to stay there, he decided to take out his gun and scare me and do a warning shot. And I choose to stay there again. And then he decided to shoot at me and he missed. And that's when I got out of there because my safety. Now, so luckily, nothing didn't happen, but it was a very terrifying situation because that was a very vulnerable place that I had to be. And here I'm in nature trying to find my solitude, find my space, and now I'm getting shot at because he doesn't want me on his river. So, so throughout all of this stuff that I'm experiencing, and of course, my story is a million stories. It's a million stories out there of BIPOC folks that has different types of scenarios of fear when it comes to the outdoors and roaming further than beyond your city parks. Just going 30 minutes down the road to Estacada and getting on the Sandy or the Clackamas or wherever. That's hard. That's hard for folks who doesn't understand even how to navigate that. Because now we're fighting generational fear, and we're fighting present fear. And so we're in some weird times, and we're all experiencing that right now, what we see in the day, et cetera, on many different levels. As BIPOC community facing that, women by themselves face that as well. When you open up these discussions and this platform and this space for people to speak in a very safe space, you start to hear the stories, right? And these stories are living amongst everybody, basically, so there's a reason why when you look at the national parks and you look at the stats, when it says less than 5% of BIPOC pursuing the national parks throughout the United States, the national park, these are places for where all Americans has the opportunity to take their families to go and share and create beautiful moment experiences. Unfortunately, there's a problem and there's a barrier. Okay. And so a lot of these barriers is access, of course, and I'll talk about that. But the other thing is the fear. No one doesn't address the fear, and no one doesn't want to talk about it. And that's why Love is King was birthed, basically, to start having these conversations, hard conversations, and talk about the fear. Okay. And so anyway, Love is King is, let me just share my screen and I'll move into this deck here. And Love is King operates in many different facets. So I'm going to run through it just to respect time, and so I can open up for questions, etc. But Love is King, how we address this fear is by we lean into Martin Luther King. Love is King is inspired from the quote, "A power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love." And so when we move forward, the tagline is "Let freedom roam." The logo celebrates the purpose of Martin Luther King Jr. We're a grassroots independent nonprofit organization which practices nonviolent, creative, and empathetic confrontation to expose the problem of equal opportunity and equal access and safe experiences in nature of people of color. The logo is symbolic in multiple meanings, and the "Let Freedom Roam" is a spin of the words of Martin Luther King Jr. We believe the freedom for all people to roam in nature without the fear and intimidation is a basic, undeniable human right. It's also the logo inspired from John Michael Basquiat. The graffiti honors the urban street and environment in contrast in the epic natural beauty of nature. The orange represents blaze orange. We highlight as a safety orange. I'm going to bookmark for a second. Safety orange. When you look back in history of how when in New York, when gangs was infested in New York, communities were scared to get out and go to the grocery store. People were scared to go out into a sidewalk and let their children play. What happened? There was a gang organization, excuse me, an organization that formed, which was the Guardian Angels. They got chapters all over the place for the mere reason to establish safety in communities, basically. So not to say that this is what Love is King is about, but just to give you an idea, because the Guardians, they used the color red and the red beret, and that was a signal of safety. It signaled a safety in the community, basically. The orange represents the same of the safety, basically. I'm going to jump around. The mission is to inspire, empower, and activate a humanitarian movement that will mobilize citizens of all colors and carry out humanitarian obligation that will raise our collective conscience, educate, and help facilitate conflict resolution through love, empathy, respect, and discrimination. We exist because people of color deserve a voice, deserve an advocate, and deserve action to ensure the freedom to roam is unhindered and unlimited. What does this look like when people come together, all walks of life, right? That's how it looks like. Everybody comes together. Everybody takes a stand together. You take an oath that the fact that you're looking out for the other person that can't speak for themselves, basically. Rather, it's the elderly people, the handicapped people, the LGBTQ community, the BIPOC community, etc. These are people, this is a part of a community that we're trying to create, a movement beyond what the nonprofit 501c3 status means. But what we're trying to do is create a national movement starting out of Portland, Oregon. And this national movement will go through the entire outdoor industry, working with allies and partners in many different spaces, government, corporate, and nonprofit, et cetera. The defending the undeniable human right to equal, equitable access to spaces in wild country, our public lands and our fresh water where people of color experience the tranquility nature provides safely. We'll do this by gathering support of allies and creating a network of passionate Love is King guardians in the field. We'll be present, we'll change the conversation, and we'll educate, enlighten, and empower. We say no to confrontation, inequality, ignorance, intimidation, judgment, closed-mindedness, fear, and status quo. We say yes to the freedom to roam. Again, more people show up. More people becomes affiliated with the movement of Love is King, basically. These are people, I don't know who you are, and I don't have to know who you are. But if I'm out there at City Park or at a boat launch or whatever the case is, and if I need some kind of information direction, if I need some kind of support, I can come to you. And because you taking that oath, that signals me that you are symbolizing safety. You're symbolizing access. I can come to you and ask for help, basically. So we can't do this alone. We're looking for allies, advocates, and champions. Love is King Guardians. These are our champions that we lean into. Who are the Guardians? They're corporate, they're military veterans, they're politicians, outdoor enthusiasts, ministers, nonprofit, community activists, influencers. Love is King Guardians, they're like an elite group and they lead with love. They're passionate, empathetic, and experienced leaders who encourage or nurture positive intersections, conversations, and positive outcomes. Guardians model the behaviors, the values, actions, and positive attitude that support Love is King. Commitment to inclusion, empathy, healing, and safety. Love is King Guardians leverage their DEI training. The DEI training is something that Love is King is not. Love is King is an actionable platform. DEI training is when folks go through and you get through that training. Of course, it's an ongoing training, but when you get through it and when you're doing it, you get to this place, you say, what can I do now? How can I be of help? How can I be of service? Love is King is an actionable platform that works with folks basically that's going through that process or they're continuing with that work basically. But Love is King is not a DEI platform. This is after DEI training. Love is King champions are young people coming up, you know, anywhere between the ages of 17 to 23, going off to college. We work with partners, and what we do, we help support our young people basically, and we give them the tools to create chapters. chapters where they could be able to spearhead and guide. We're about creating leaders for tomorrow and elevating young voices for tomorrow in conservation spaces, et cetera. Um, Going in our 2021 communication strategy, one of our strategy platforms on how we create actionable platform is we create heritage events, which is what we're doing right now, basically. These heritage events, they lean into the opportunity to weaving out of holiday celebrations, basically. This gives an opportunity to celebrate the LGBTQ, the Native American, Black History Month, Veterans Day, etc. But this also gives an opportunity to bring a deeper community together. What does this look like? This looks like in a schematic, Black History Month. We have the corporate sponsors. We're working with corporate sponsors, we're working with conservation partnerships, and then we bring in basically the community. We bring in the community, and then how we strategically make this work. Again, we work with a Native Fish Society, et cetera, and we'll create fishing outings, but we'll call the fishing outings a certain name of a maverick who's done certain things in their time. And that gives them an opportunity to tell their story in an engagement activity in the outdoors. And I'm talking about easy access, easy entry for BIPOC communities, et cetera. Mountain Henson outing, that was a phenomenal experience. We brought out a lot of people and it was awesome. And and it was great. We tied it into a hiking survival and bushcraft. And we told that story intertwined into this experience. Same thing with the Buffalo Soldiers. A lot of people don't know why Buffalo Soldiers, because they were the first regiment to ride bikes in national parks. And so we created a single track experience on bikes, basically, and elevated that story. George Washington Carver going into the Mountain Hood Forest, learning how to identify plants and how to take plants basically and make that into food. At this time, which was Black History Month, we had a person come into play here, and they not just identify the plants and show people what you can eat, but they also told them how you can actually take these plants and make soul food in the forest, which was a phenomenal experience. So it's all about elevating these experiences and telling these stories and creating special moments around partners, et cetera, that equates to access, equates to safety in the outdoors, thinking out of the box. LGBTQ celebration, we take that model, again, same similar concept, but we change our experiences from Black history to Frida the Fur. A lot of people don't know who she was. The first lesbian mountaineer of Mount Everest, Dr. Jessica Link, Ruth Gates. These give opportunity to tell these people's story to a lot of folks. And this is what makes things much more rich, is through the storytelling and the outing experience, et cetera. We move, again, another model, Native American celebration, the same thing. The Inuit Nation, George Medicine Crow, and Sitting Bull. The beauty about these kind of strategic tactic type of engagements is that this allows to create a deeper community, but it's also spearheaded and guided by the right partners to help support this, basically. Again, with the Native American, part of our partnerships will change. We'll change into Native American partners and allow them to step in, basically, and help guide this and create a heritage event. And so, yeah, it's very strategic. One of our initiatives outside of how we create another action platform is Operation Rome. What is Operation Rome? Love is King Operation Rome is a training expeditions to develop BIPOC and LGBTQ advocates to advance conservation organizations, environmental social justice missions. And so what does this mean? What is this like? I will sit down with the conservation group and the work that they're doing to help protect that water or protect that land or wildlife, and where they're running short as far as volunteer support. We will learn, where do you run short at? What are your needs? What are you looking for? And then we'll take that information and recruit BIPOC leaders that are already in spaces of the outdoors, just looking at closer to a conservation group to help do that work. And so while we recruit, then after that, we create an expedition on that river. We'll do a 1 week to a 2 week engagement and bring these BIPOC, and this will be a facilitation of leadership, a facilitation with management, advocacy, development is all intersected right here on this expedition platform, basically. When they come out with the signed contract with that conservation group, and they will commit up to 60 hours 4 year of doing work with that conservation group, basically. This gives the conservation group an opportunity to receive a team of 6 BIPOC as an extension leg of Army that has different skill sets to help support the work that they're trying to get done. In exchange, it gives BIPOC an opportunity to learn and to network and to build relationships in the conservation space. And it could possibly open doors closer just by being part of that volunteer support, where it can open up doors into a career path, a new career path. But this gives more of this bridge. We're creating this bridge into conservation space and how we can bring more BIPOC into these spaces. So just to reiterate, as I was saying, the cause-driven global and nonprofit landscape, micro intersections, nonstop demands, recruitment and struggle for financial stability, often precedents to an organizational diversity and desire to build a more inclusive movement. Love is King provides conservation organizations seeking inclusivity, a powerful platform to engage, recruit, sustain, and activate new BIPOC and LGBTQ leaders, focusing on environmental and transformative social justice. Our mission is to empower a new generation of change makers who will bring the passion, inspiration, and training to your organization. This is our classroom, basically. When we move into our classroom, this becomes Love is King's classroom. We modify and we shift and change according to the conservation group that we're working with to a location that centers around the campaign development that conservation group is doing to help support and protect. From there, this is how we grow leaders, basically. Operation Rome is a tested educational curriculum and promotes shared learning, interactivity, active dialogue, intergroup connections to build effective leaders who can mobilize to support organizations' mission. We know our outdoor experiences deepen the natural bond of the environment. The most marginalized and the most effective by inequality are not always equipped or empowered, are often left out of the decision-making process. Love is King Rome's curriculum builds interpersonal decision-making and leadership and management skills, as well as empathy. Operation Rome will add powerful BIPOC and LGBTQ advocates on local, state, and national levels. I'll just jump down to right here. The key piece of Operation Rome is powerful commitment made between the BIPOC LGBTQ allies with our partners, specific campaign initiatives. LIK Rome experiences equip BIPOC LGBTQ participants with robust advocacy and leadership skills and develop a strong cohort that can lean into. And at the end of the LIK Rome expedition, participants will use the advocacy and leadership skills gained for the partner conservation group. Our BIPOC LGBTQ advocates will make a year-long commitment to specific campaign at the conclusion of an expedition and deliver a minimum of 80 hours of volunteer service to your organization's selected initiative, basically. So that's the second part of how we create action under Love is King with our platform of basically creating action. The other one is stories over silence. And this is from more of a BIPOC standpoint, which you can find on the website, but this is an opportunity where many BIPOCs are taking the time to create 1 to 2 minute type of video of their experiences. And this allows allies basically to sit down and listen to their experiences without the charge. And so there's so many people that likes to charge and naysayers, etc. But this is something you can sit with it, you can learn it, listen, sit with it, and think about it. Think about their experience. What they're saying is something real. Again, it goes back to that less than 5% that's going to our national parks. And there's a reason for that. And if we take the time to listen to what these stories are saying, that right there alone gives us a map of understanding why that is a low percent throughout the United States, period. Our last initiative that we're creating as right now, and I'm working with the city, is developing basically a Love is King placard, metal placard that we want to try to establish. It's used in Portland as a pilot, really, and this is creating safe sanctuaries, basically. No bigotry, no ignorance, no racism, etc. This is a tried and true case study that I will share with folks and everything that's actually works. And inspiration is from the blue light on every college campus. When you see that blue light on every college campus, that signals safety. Everybody knows that. This is the blue light in the outdoors, basically, of what we're trying to establish. And so right now I'm working with the National Wildlife Refuge. I'm working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, also the national parks and local level on the city parks as well. And we're all having dialogue and trying to conversate about how we get this. And as far as the corporate partners already involved with this is REI. And they're basically stepping up and seeing this is an important need that we need to address. We need to put this. This gives psychologically to people that that I can come here because this is safe. And not to say it's 100% safe proof, but what this means is that you're stepping into a space that's filled with many folks of a network that cares about your safety in the outdoors, basically. And so you're not alone. And so this helps people to go beyond the city parks, right? And go beyond a little bit further, because that's what we want. We want people, all people, to roam further, to go bolder into places they never explored, and to enjoy the outdoors and find that healing. And no one should not have to deal with any kind of aggression that comes in front of them, basically. And so I'm going to stop right there and open up for questions.
Thank you, Chad. People feel free to ask Chad some questions. Just go ahead and speak up. I think it's the easiest way to do this. Your passion is infectious.
Thank you.
That's, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Susie.
Oh yeah, that's amazing initiative, Chad. I think I listened to you speak 4 or 5 years ago when I first started with the council, and this is really such a cool initiative. Are you, so I know you're starting the placard program in Portland, and then what is your vision for moving that out, and what's your vision for partnerships with environmental organizations like the River Basin Council?
Yeah, the placard concept that we're working on, using Portland as a pilot, which we're already in talking about it, and we're actually using Forest Park as a pilot right now, is where Love is King's been doing a lot of events, etc. And that's been going great. It's been going, I mean, every time we do, it's very successful. And so once we hone in, we're using this year as a full-blown pilot. The concept and the idea is to basically package this up. And what we're doing here, we're going to show what you can do in Idaho. We're going to show what you can do in Montana. We're going to show what you can do in Texas. I see Love is King as a national movement, basically. Not it's going to start local and will always stay local, but this is something that that's a social responsibility, that's an requirement for every humanitarian person on this earth, basically, which is centered around the safety and the access for everyone, basically. Rather you young, old, wherever you come from, basically. This is our responsibility as leaders of organizations, companies, etc. This is a shared responsibility, and so I see this as actually, as a national movement, and that's where we're pushing to, what we're trying to do. And one of the reasons why I'm reaching out and working with corporate companies such like Patagonia and REI, I'm leaning into resources where they have leverages to be able to thrust that out. My strategic impulse, which I started this in last June, during the first of the pandemic, etc. And I literally strategically worked and held meetings with nothing but decision makers. That's the only way for something like this. It's going to take decision makers from top level to bring that down, basically. Because if they can get behind it and say yes, then their culture within their community or within their organization gets behind that. And now we got much more of a stronger team. Working with you guys is the same thing of how I see working with Native Fish Society. It's gonna, again, it's a link up opportunity for conservation groups to get in that space and working with you guys. If you guys got campaigns that's working on, one of those initiatives I highlighted, to Operation Roam, and you guys need if you guys need some kind of support that you're maybe losing on staff hours, and you don't have enough hours, those hours can roll itself into potential volunteer BIPOCs that can come in and represent your conservation group or what you're doing and moving forward. Now, what we just created a link bridge of community basically, and we're all working together basically. So there's different ways of how we can work together. It's just a matter of sitting down and breaking bread. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a second question. Sorry, I'm not gonna totally usurp everybody's questions, but are you familiar with the River Stewards program that started last year on the Clackamas River?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you're working with those folks. I mean, I can think of 100 places where I'm like, yes. Okay, great. I'll shut up now. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Some other people have questions, comments?
I'll chime in with a comment. What you're doing is just amazing. And I'm familiar with the snorkel surveys and deployments that you've done on the Umpqua and stuff. And that's just so awesome. And I really feel like the Clackamas provides such a great opportunity because we are so close to the urban center, but there's still all these really wonderful natural wild places that are within reach. And so I just feel like this watershed of many is like just so ripe with opportunity for getting involved. And we need that involvement. We recognize that is a cohort that's just not getting out as much as they should or could.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. The more I think I'm doing some work with the state parks right now. It's almost same sort of, the same similar need of what you just said and how you address that. And so we're in our third phase of actually developing a grant with Meyer, and because what they want to see more BIPOC into some of these state parks. They're having a hard time trying to make that happen, et cetera. And so we worked out an awesome strategy to where Love is King will be playing that strategic role to help raise that awareness and bring more BIPOC into these state parks and doing certain type of events and activities, et cetera, that will bring these state parks and merge it into like one flow of community, basically. And it's the same thing with the watershed, et cetera. And so again, it's literally about sitting down and identifying, where's the missing links at and what's going on. And then let's look at how we can fill in those links right there to make those connections and make the community much more connected to the watershed, et cetera. Yeah.
Some of the heritage events that you showed us, they look rather sophisticated. And I was trying to think of like, what could we do on the Clackamas and with the expertise that we have on our board? And it might not be quite as sophisticated as what you showed up there, but I mean, would you even be interested in something like, we could maybe organize a rafting trip or a fishing day, or I mean, even something simple like a picnic on the river or a tour of our restoration projects, or would those kinds of things fit what you're looking for?
Those things would 100% fit. It's just really, it's not, thank you for the compliment, but it's not really all that sophisticated, and everything like that. We work with a lot of duct tape here, and we make things work, but I give you a good example. I did some work with Native Fish Society. And so earlier in the year, of course, the fear of COVID was really, really right, and the vaccine stuff was even out. But what we did an experience online, which it put the Native Fish Society in a really vulnerable place because they never done it and they were a little bit wishy-washy, but they stepped into this space. And so what we created was tied in with the internet. And so I don't know if anybody familiar with, but number one, Native Fish Society, everybody knows what the work that they do, and so we wanted to create a heritage event centered around Black History Month, centered around fishing, and conservation, et cetera. And so due to the COVID stuff, what we did is a full online. And so what we did was that Maverick person that we highlighted, I don't know if anybody ever heard of Mamie Parker. Mamie Parker is the first African-American fish biologist that was hired by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And so she broke a lot of barriers. She's still living today and doing a lot. And so I was able to reach out to Mammy Parker, and we paired Miss Mammy Parker up with the Native Fish Society. And then how we did that, we created a social platform to where the Native Fish, where Mammy Parker stepped on the Native Fish Society platform, and we had basically a full Q&A about the life in her life of Mammy Parker, and at the same time talking about her work as a fish biologist. And she also done some work here in Portland, Oregon, around some rivers in her younger years through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So it was a really interesting engagement. Yes, we weren't able to get on the water due to COVID stuff, but that's, again, that's another lens of how we can create a heritage event. It doesn't take that much. What it takes is heart from partners, right? And the opportunity to think out of the box of how we can work together. Because really these outings is all about easy access. We're not talking about doing a full-blown, I'm gonna, me as an angler, I'm gonna go, 20 miles back country and put my waders on and get in 7 feet deep of water and going after steelhead with the spey rod. We're not talking about that, We're talking about something that's much more of an easy approach, right? An easy engagement that can create memories, that create special opportunities of curiosity to ask questions, etc. Lower the intimidation and open up that space and show love. That's what Love is King's about, right? Love is King's about coming together with all walks of life, coming together and taking a stand together, and let's create special moments for other people that doesn't know how to find those moments, right? And so we're here in these spaces, in the outdoor spaces, and this is our love and our passion. A lot of us take it for granted because some of us are brought up into these wild spaces, right? Some of us are born, and so we forget about the little small steps of fear that it takes for certain people that has that's completely disconnected from the outdoors. Those are real small steps. That's how we got to think. We got to think really easy steps, right? Even if it's fly fishing, maybe not going to the river, it could be going to the line and held up a dry casting event, right? That next step can be the river one day, but the thing is that we got to take these kind of small steps. We got to bring out all walks of life, people in the community that not just shows love for what they do in the conservation space, but this is also a humanitarian movement. And that humanitarian movement comes from leaders. It comes from people who believe in other people, who still believe today, regardless of the hate and the bigotry and ignorance that we are in right now, which is being around us for a very long time, and everything like that. But guess what? Love is what will dismantle that. And that kind of love creates that kind of community and that army, basically. So, yeah. So anyway, I gave you more than what you asked for. I apologize. That's just my passion speaking. So sorry.
Yeah, I could tell. All right, Bill, did you have a question? I think
You're on mute, Bill.
I can't hear you.
*6 on your phone, Bill.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Chad, the council is very interested in how we can get more minorities involved in our habitat programs. And you've spoken a little bit to that. It's more than just fishing. It's ensuring taking care of the habitat and what's happening on the river. How can you help us do that?
I spoke a little and I highlighted, and I can give you a real world example of what's happening. But when we're talking about the habitat and work involved and campaign awareness, etc., Operation Rome lends itself to that. And that's going to require a deeper conversation. A couple of conversations actually, because that's going to take time where we have to identify and whittle down of how that can build a fit, but to support what you're talking about, Operation Rome. And I'll share a real example instead of me trying to come up with a fictitious example. I'll give you a real example. So right now, I'm working with three nonprofit conservation groups. The first one is Alaska Wilderness League. The second one is the Forest Park Conservancy. And then the third one is the Friends groups up on the Kenai, I'm sorry, up in Anchorage that's tied into the Kenai Peninsula. And so all three formats basically, it's the same format on every one I'm doing. So how this works, so I am in contact with the Alaska Wilderness League. I'm gonna just share this with you. So my contact, what I'm doing is I'm working with the Alaska Wilderness League and I'm talking with, let's say her name is Monica. And I said, okay, Monica, you know, we have a relationship, we're working together, and she's an outreach person. They're looking for more support to help come in, to help support them, to help protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The wildlife, the fresh water there, et cetera. And as people know that the Arctic National Wildlife has been under threat, you know, on many different places of our oil. They're also looking for someone to help them come in and help advocate, you know, on a national platform to support the Gwich'in Nation. Okay, and so here I am. I'm learning about the needs of what they're looking for, and I'm also learning about where they're falling short at. And so what I'm doing is I will basically take that information and I will create basically a group and find a group of BIPOC minority folks that are interested into wanting to go deeper into a conservation space. I'm representing myself as an African-American, so that helps out. And so they're making that connection. And so last night I took that information presented, and then last night I held a Zoom meeting. I held a Zoom meeting with 35 minorities that are interested and want to get closer. Now, these are folks that are disconnected, that doesn't know that much about how to get into concert, but they care about our environment, et cetera. And so I'm saying, like, so when I was talking to them, I said, this is what we do, this is how we're going to do it, et cetera. And as I'm talking to them, now here's the strategy of how this works. So the strategy of how this works with Operation Rome is, now that I have presented to my 30, I'm only with Alaska Wilderness League only needs 6. They only needs a team of 6 people to come in and help them, basically. Okay, that's fine. So we have an application. They fill out an application. We learn it. We capture their skill sets. We capture their outdoor experiences, et cetera, what they know, what they don't know, and everything like that. Monica, and between Love is King and Alaska Wilderness League, we collectively look at it and we basically pull out that 6. Those 6 are going to be our team. This is our team for 2022 that's going to be working with Alaska Wilderness League. But before they can work with Alaska Wilderness League, they need to be trained. They need to be trained centered around the issues of what's going on in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. Just like everybody knows, in order to advocate for something, you either had experienced it, or you've been on that land, or you fish that water. The more you fish that water, the more of an advocate you come off, and you could talk about it, et cetera. So what we have to do is, Alaska Wilderness League, they basically fund the expedition, a 2-week expedition into the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. And on this expedition, this is facilitated as a leadership ramp up fast management type of experience. Almost kind of like similar like NOLS, not the NOLS on the lower primary people experience. I'm talking about the NOLS master leadership of what they do when they're training midshipmen to get ready to go into the fleet as naval officers. When you're part of the Navy Academy, et cetera, you got to go through that NOLS training just to get that training, that understanding, and then you go out into the fleet and you become that officer. That's what Love is King is doing with these 6. We're going to take these 6 and put them through a master level training centered around all the conservation that's guided by Alaska Wilderness League in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. When they come out of that situation of experience, basically, then they are basically trained and they pair themselves up with Alaska Wilderness League, and they're working for 60 hours each for the remaining of the year, basically. Alaska Wilderness Leagues get a team of 6, each one committing 60 hours, Each one has different skill sets. So we're going to outline at the beginning on the behalf of Alaska Wilderness League, because they're telling us the type of skill sets that they're looking for. Whether it could be everything from social media to writing to photography to management, whatever the case is. That's how we're going to use that information to find those 6. We recruit them in, and then we build them up into this leadership of conservation and awareness advocacy. And they need someone to fly to DC to help advocate. They got their team basically and everything like that. Another good example, real world at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, same similar concept that I'm working with the Friends groups. This is, you can shape shift it different ways. So this is a unique shift of Operation Roam. So everything I just shared with everybody is the same similar deal, but only shift is that the Friends group out of Alaska saying, you know what, how could we do this? Because we need like basically minorities come in. We would like to see more minorities involved, et cetera, et cetera. And so as we're talking, they decided, say, you know what, how about when you take the 6 on the Kenai Peninsula, you do this leadership training with them, et cetera. And guess what? The Friends Group's board will recruit a board member. That board member starts to open up the committee of the remaining of that 5. They use that 5 committee basically to help support other activities that the board needs, et cetera. But at the same time, they are able to carry on heritage events up in the Kenai Peninsula, and they're able to bring more people because now they're trained, et cetera. And so basically it could be shifted. So that's how we solve a really good problem of bringing more folks into the space and helping to bring closer to our freshwater, our land, and to protect it basically. But yeah.
So Chad, how can you help us do that on the Clackamas?
Easily.
I think we're about out of time right now, but it sounds to me, or I guess I'm thinking the next steps might be that we discuss it and make sure the board is in favor of moving forward, and maybe we can brainstorm some ideas about how we move forward and get back to Chad with those ideas, and we could talk about it and kind of figure out what would work from there.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a plan?
That sounds like a plan. I have an awesome idea to respond to that, and I can wait for that for the next meeting if everyone agrees. And again, it's very strategic, awesome idea that everything I'm sharing with you can be very, very localized, and it could be really interesting. And I think it'd be a very executable, strategic position for a group like you guys, basically, what you guys need and everything. But yeah.
All right. Well, if it's an awesome idea, do we want to give Chad a few more minutes on our agenda? All right, go for it.
Well, the idea is I'll try to keep it really simple. So everything I just shared about Operation Roam are the 2 examples that's happening right now. Same similar concept. Only difference is that so we got to be able to train these 6 BIPOC. Number one, meeting with you guys on a local level is much more easier, of course, and so we can nip that in the bud, identifying the weakness and identifying the needs of what the organization is looking for. Number 2 is Love is King can easily step in and recruit those BIPOC to help support. We can do that. That's not a problem. Number 3 is how do we create that experience and facilitate that education implementing on the Clackamas? Well, through your organization, you may have resources to a fly fishing guide, or even a lodge or somewhere that's maybe nestled or somewhere on the river. What I'm saying is that we book out basically a week and a half with a fly fishing guide that's tied to you guys, et cetera. And we basically make camp on the Clackamas River. And we center it around every day. It's leadership training. A week and a half out locally, and it can be somewhere on the Clackamas in the woods somewhere, but a week and a half, we stage basically a full facilitation of outdoor leadership centered around the focus on what you guys are doing to help protect the watershed, etc. And we'll be working closely with you guys with that will be implemented into a program, a curriculum, etc. Board members can come out and exchange to introduce themselves. For every board member, every background is a teaching aid. Every board member has some, they become the teachers, etc. Engage with that group. So we're looking at a week and a half. It could be a week and a half of a stationary base camp on the Clackamas River, or it could be a week and a half of river run, basically. And every day or basically every day we'll have a base camp all along for that week and a half, except on the Clackamas River. So when they come off that Clackamas River, they understand that watershed. They understand what's going on other than the training and everything. Because right now, our ultimate goal is this is not babysitting kids. This is master level. This is leadership. This is leaders teaching leaders, basically. That's what this is about and everything. So we're growing leaders for specifically to do the work to help support what you guys are doing, that advocate that campaign work on the Clackamas River, et cetera, in a nutshell.
All right, that sounds great. We're going to need to talk about it, and we will get back to you, Chad. Thank you so much for all the time and passion that you have for this program and for sharing all of that with us tonight. Really appreciate it.
I really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you so much.
Okay. And you're welcome to stay if you want to see more about what we do, but if you have to go, that's okay too, either way.
I do have to go because I'm trying to get on the road to head up to the Steam Mountains in Albert Desert right now.
That sounds nice. All right. Thank you, Chad.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to have to make some time to discuss that and see if board members are interested in participating in a program with Love is King, and if we want to partner with them. But next on our agenda, we have a presentation from our own Adam Spencer. This is a presentation. It's an example, or I guess we're going to get a little bit of a view of the high school education that Adam's been doing online. So a little bit of background is that Water Environment Services hired Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership a couple of years ago to do watershed health education for our program. And one of the things we wanted to do is expand that to the high school level, because we only had elementary schools in that program. And so Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership doesn't do high school education either, really. So they subcontracted with CRBC. And then with everything going on with COVID and school being completely online, it was a bit of a challenge. And Adam came up with what I thought was a fantastic solution to how do we teach high school kids about watershed health when they can't get outside. You know, that's always our number one way to do it. And so that's what he's going to show us tonight. So thank you, Adam. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Gail. And thanks, everybody. And yeah, excited to share. I know we got to tease this a little bit at the Watershed Celebration. And so, you know, this has been a 2-hour class. Basically, I've been meeting with classes for 2 occasions. We've done 15 classes and over 250 students so far. And at the end, I'll share some of their responses, because it's been really awesome. This tour is a conversation piece, and the responses have been just fantastic. So, you know, since it's a 2-hour class, we'll hit some of the highlights, and also mainly just really want you to know how to use this tour so you can do it on your own. I originally designed it so that it could be an independent tour. So we start where the Clackamas gets its name, with the Clackamas people, and we'll have a little bit of an orientation here. So just making sure everyone can see this, and you can see my mouse here over the sky. Is that right? So how this works is this is a virtual reality website, and you see the little goggles in the corner. You can actually, if you have a virtual reality viewer, you can put the goggles on and look around from the inside of the image. But since we are not wearing our screens on our head right now, you just click and drag, and you can see that I have this little hand right now is an open hand, and then now I'm clicking and it's a closed hand, and that's when I look around and move the screen. So I'll send you the link to check this out and to continue the tour on your own. But just want to make sure that you see that's essentially it. There's no clicking on items. It's all just about taking this little black circle here that's in the middle of your view and hovering it on items so that they'll come up so you can read the cards. Then when you hover off of them, they'll go back and away. So you take the black circle, hover on the navigation, it comes up and you read it. So you have these navigation cards, which are all the info for the tour. And then you have the links, which are the pink boxes, and that will take you to the next scene. So just want to let you know how to use that, and hope to send you on your own journey afterwards. We have these little blue balls. Those are just little reference points for what you're looking at in the image. So there in the distance, we see Mount Hood. Here is, of course, Oregon City, looking down at the Willamette River and the Oregon City Arch Bridge. Here's our title screens up here, the Clackamas 360 virtual tour as part of the Watershed Health Education Support Service that Gail was mentioning. And thanks to our sponsors up here, Clackamas Water Environment Services, Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership, and the University of Oregon Wayne Morse Center for Law and Politics. So yeah, let's dive in. Just looking around the 205. Some of you have probably seen this from other vantage points, and this is a rare one to get. And here we are straight up above Willamette Falls, or as the Clackamas people called it, Hayes Tayi Tumwata, which means Great Chief Waterfall. So we'll go hover over on the start link, and that'll jump down and take us to the waterfall. So here we are hovering around right at the edge of the waterfalls of Willamette Falls, which are actually the second largest waterfall in the United States by volume. So it's pretty cool that we have that right here. And you see how the info cards pop up. So the name Clackamas, as many of you know, I'm sure, comes from the Clackamas people who lived here since time immemorial, since before we started counting time. The Clackamas people were a Chinook people. So they spoke Chinook language, shared culture with people who lived throughout the Columbia region and down the Oregon coast and up the Washington coast. And today, where we have Willamette Falls Visitor Center and Westland High School in Oregon City, the Clackamas people had villages called Clo-Wawalis, and they were the Clo-Wawalis band of Clackamas people. And the Willamette Falls, as they still are today, were back then a very important source of food, as they would gather there with these great cedar planks and collect salmon and lamprey as they tried to jump up the falls. And then here at these villages of Clo-Wawalis, they would smoke the fish and dry them and create their food for longer periods of time so they could travel. You know, there were nomadic people that moved following different food sources, going up into the mountains at different harvest times. And so their industry here at the village was this time of great preparation as well. Something I didn't learn until doing the research for this tour is about the Tomanawas meteorite. And I'd heard of Tomanawas Falls, and if anyone has read The River Why, he's fishing on the Tomanawas River. And so I'd heard the name before, but the name Tomanawas actually comes from the meteorite, which is the largest meteorite ever found in the United States. And scientists believe it's the iron core of a planet that collided with a star billions of years ago. And it actually landed up in Canada and washed its way down into our neck of the woods through the Missoula Lake outburst floods. When towards the end of the Ice Age, all of the water that had melted out of that ice sheet burst through the Missoula Dam and washed not only 100 feet of sediment into the Willamette Valley, but also these glacial erratic rocks, including this meteorite. And now it's in the American Museum of Natural History, and the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde have a special agreement to visit the meteorite, which they consider sacred, as the Clackamas people have been somewhat, they're part of the Grand Ronde tribe now. And so when we think of the timeline of settlers and colonization, Lewis and Clark were some of the first white settlers to visit this area, and they estimated there were about 1,800 Clackamas people spread across 11 villages throughout the area. So yeah, the tour for the students has all these go beyond prompts. And so that's kind of the homework assignment. So some teachers have assigned those, some of them have made it extra credit. And that's a lot of that is where we get some of the high school level curriculum. And so the next stage goes to geology, but I'm going to skip that since we've had a bit of geology lessons here. So we'll go to Hidden Falls Park, because I know Maddie would like to see this. So this is Rock Creek, just below Maddie's house. So on the tour, we'll start seeing this map that has the outline of the watershed and some of the sub-watersheds. And so you look for the red star for where we are on this tour. And in the sub-watersheds of the Clackamas Basin is 940 square miles. So we tell the students about what a watershed is. You know, you could think of it as the entire Clackamas watershed, or even just the watershed of your gutter that drains the roof of your house. And that's a great way to start breaking up watersheds into sizable chunks that you could manage, that these students could say, let's take control of the watershed of my street, and think about all the stormwater and all the rainwater and all the pesticides, and maybe that's the watershed that I can manage. So it's important to break up watersheds into smaller pieces so we can take care of them. Here's our Clackamas Basin as we are part of the Columbia River watershed, which includes the tallest mountain in the Canadian Rockies, Mount Columbia, snows from the Grand Tetons, most of Oregon, most of Washington, most of Idaho, and it's about the area of France. And so, you know, we are all connected to all of these waters, and we have all of these people upstream of us on the Columbia River. And so that's, again, we're taking care of the Clackamas Basin, and we just hope that everyone upstream is doing their part to take care. And we're all connected with this great watershed community, which is also, we're connected by the salmon that explore this entire watershed. And we'll talk about salmon a little bit later on. So here's a map of all the main 16 sub-watersheds and their sizes. And then we'll also show a map of the Riverside fire and how that's affected these watersheds. So as we go through, just keep an eye on which watersheds where, and we'll get into the fires a little bit later too. But here's looking at Hidden Falls Park. The falls are back there behind the bridge. And this is a great trail. It's also pretty close, so I ask if students have been here, and you know, they can share if they have. And I really try to tell them, you know, we wish we could take you out in person, but this is just an appetizer, and you know, start writing down places that you would like to visit, and then maybe when it's safe to gather again, we can take you there. So we talk about hydrology here. On this slide, we talk about the provisioning resources. So I just ask students to put in the chat, and you can play along if you'd like. What are resources we get from the Clackamas River? So think of something that, something you get locally, something that the basin provides you. And so, you know, we have students hit some of the obvious ones, of course, like water. We prompt about farms, and this is kind of a nice image that shows, here's a water treatment facility off of Clackamas River Drive. This picture is taken just downstream of Riverside Park, which is right there. You know, if you look upslope, you see the Mount Hood again, and that we get forestry, which 78% is most of the basin. 78% is forest, and the Forest Service owns most of the basin. So forestry is a huge part of our local economy and what we get out of the basin. Also farming. Farmland accounts for 8% of the Clackamas Basin, with 3% being hay and pasture. We have some of the largest we're one of the largest providers of Christmas tree farms in the nation. And there's also, you can see the Clackamas Industrial Park. So just the land that we're on is also the basin. So the basin provides us land to build things, to build other things. And then we start talking about other uses like recreational uses, bequest value, that you can give something to a future generation that is clean and healthy. Your spiritual values that you get from your connecting to your local natural heritage and being proud of being a place like this, or being from a place like this. So this is a great way to spur some conversations with students. I think I'll jump a little further down the trail here in the interest of time. So the first class gives that full view of the watershed, going from the Clackamas people to the geology, to the ecology, the hydrology, the provisioning services, and then focusing more specifically on water. And then the second tour follows salmon back up the river and how salmon, what their challenge is with climate change. So we start at the mouth of the Columbia River and give an overview of salmon and the salmon peoples and the salmon nations, and make a point to talk about that the idea that, you know, first of all, that Indians and Native Americans are something of the past is really an outdated idea, and that there's currently, to many of the salmon nations, the idea that we have dams is a cultural genocide for many of them, specifically the Snake River dams, that they compare it to when settlers killed all the buffaloes to get rid of the plains peoples. So we try to bring up some of these issues that are pretty hard to discuss and often aren't discussed in school. And it's opened up really, really good conversations. And then we follow salmon from the Columbia River back upstream through Eagle Creek. And this is a slide that shares all of the challenges that salmon face through climate change. So in this image, it's that's Mount Hood there to the south. And we are actually up at Mount Adams. And in this image, which was taken in April a few years ago, you can see the damage from wildfires. And there's also pretty low snowpack this year. So this image shows some of those changes. And salmon are dealing with a list of issues. Mainly the changes in the Pacific Northwest are connected to the fluctuating rainfall that we'll have. So we talk a lot about how rain is really the defining aspect of our region. We're defined by this great amount of water that we get. That's what gives us our great big trees, is because they've evolved giganticism to be able to store water in those great trunks so that they can continue to photosynthesize over the long summers. And with climate change, that's going to change a lot of our weather patterns, so that we'll have warmer and drier summers that are longer with greater risk of wildfires. And then we'll have also have flooding years where we'll have a lot more rain, which has its own issues. So salmon will struggle with a changing phenology, which is the timing, natural timing of things. We're seeing already that their smolt date is getting 2.5 days earlier per decade. So the timing that the salmon start heading downstream. They also are getting out to sea and not catching this great upwelling happening. So usually they try to get there at this time when there's colder currents on top of the ocean, and that brings up a bunch of food. And if they don't get there at the right time with colder currents, they get out to the ocean and they have less food to eat. So water temperature really defines how salmon migrate in the streams, beyond just in the rivers, but out into the ocean. They'll be dealing with ocean acidification, as 1/3 of our carbon falls into the ocean and changes the pH of the ocean. They'll have to deal with droughts and streams that are disconnected. We can lose habitat. We also know that at a certain temperature of water, salmon just cannot live there. And also eggs have to have a certain temperature. And if they get up to a certain temperature, they might not be able to survive as well. And on the other side of the coin, floods can destroy habitat. So there's really a lot of issues that they'll struggle with, and that's not including fire. So I'll just share this last one and then get to some of their responses, since I know we're shorter on time. But this has also been a very interesting moment with the students, sharing this map of the Riverside fire and how it affects salmon, but really taking the opportunity to ask students what their experiences of the fire was. And that's been really insightful, just to hear, some of them, many of them had to evacuate or live with their grandparents for several days. One student told a story that his dad was in Detroit and was one of the last people to get out, and then his truck broke down, and he actually started tearing up sharing that story. And this event we all shared is a trauma that we all shared, and so just encouraging the students to talk about what they went through, to share with their friends, their teachers, their parents, and to make sure that they understand that it's really scary what happened, and that they might have other things, other feelings, other issues because of it. There's a new sort of psychological challenge to children is climate anxiety. And it's this idea that growing up in an age when the very earth that you're living on is not going to be suited for you to survive, and learning that when you're a child and you're not able to survive for yourself anyway, it's really a challenge. So presenting these kind of issues to young people is something that you have to make sure you can really deliver in a safe place, or in a way that they can also unpack it. So that's been a challenge with this tour, is showing all of this information and then running out of time and not giving enough time to debrief a little bit. So I share about fire ecology and how it's naturally evolved. A little bit more about the Riverside fire itself, in that even though we see that map of our watershed and we see that it's a massive part of the watershed that has burned, when you look at the soil severity map, it provides a little more hope that there are some areas that were really heavily burned, but a lot of it is actually not as badly burned. And then talking about the nutrient cycling and fire ecology, that there are good things about fire, and it's good for some species and it will grow back. And then we end by talking about the record numbers that we've had on the Clackamas this last year. We share a few of our projects that we've been working on that we can make a difference to support salmon and help them, and going into personal lifestyle decisions that you can do to reduce your own footprint. And just some of the comments we've had just between, this is an exit survey I have the students do to improve the tour and to just hear their opinions and what they've learned. And some of the things they've said are just really, it's been really nice to see that they're really excited to hear about the cultural, spiritual significance of salmon to Indigenous people. We had comments like, wait, so you mean the river might run out? The river might dry up someday? The importance of salmon as a keystone species. And yeah, they're also saying just thank you for presenting. This has helped my COVID experience with something that's more than just this Zoom learning that we've been doing for a long time. So yeah, it's been really awesome to, I also realized, like, the first time I did it, I was so excited and so happy to bring this whole project together, and that I got to travel all over the watershed to get to know these places for myself and fly the drone everywhere, and then do all this research about the area. And there's a few adaptations that will come out of this, including a Spanish language version. And then we can also post this tour on our website and our partners' websites, and also make it like a Facebook album that can be a tour with a lot of the text there. So I was really excited some of the first times I presented, and then I realized I'm just talking at my computer. And instead of just being on my computer every day in an office, I'm now talking to my computer, since that particular class was not very responsive. But yeah, so just again, thank you for this opportunity Wes and LSEP and you all council members to support the opportunity. And I hope you can take the tour on your own. So just remember, you click and drag, highlight, and things will come up, go away, and they'll go back. So I'll be happy to take any questions you have. And yeah, and if you ever have any questions about how to run it in the future as well, please don't hesitate to ask.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Adam. If anybody has questions, we probably have time for just one or two. But go ahead and speak up if you do have questions.
Just one quick question, if I might have missed this, but how do school districts get in touch with you so that they can sign up for this or become more aware of it?
Yeah, so that's been one of the challenges, honestly, is I've sent out a whole bunch of emails multiple times, and only a few bites have happened. So I'd love to spread the word more. I had one of the teachers who I worked with, he had me present to, he was teaching 3 classes. So he had me do all 3 classes, and then all 3 classes once the next course started. So he was really supportive. And yeah, I'm just asking them to continue to spread the word because we do have some budget left to present. So, I'll mention I submitted the project to the Oregon Environmental Education Conference, and they've accepted me to present there. So hopefully it can be something we can share, just how to make these kind of VR experiences and educate students in a more in-depth way other than just the 2D-ness of the screens, since we might have more virtual learning in the future.
Well, great use of technology and of our drone. So glad to see the drone getting some real use around here. It's terrific. And I really, yeah, I've never seen anything quite like this. So I just thought it was a great interactive thing for the kids, for the students to be able to use. And when I went in online to try it out, I found it really mesmerizing, you know, to just travel around on your computer screen and look at all these different places from a different angle than you could see if you were on the ground. And then I also asked Adam to present today just because I thought it was important for us to get a better feel for what the staff is doing. You know, every month we read about it in the packet and we hear the staff report, and I just thought people are reading that we have a virtual tour of the watershed, but they don't, you know, you don't really have a feel for what it is until you see it. So thanks for showing that to us, Adam.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
All right, so we have a break on the agenda before we get to the next, our next step. So how about, since we're running just a little over, let's take 5 minutes and come back at 7:35. Okay, you can keep your screen on and I will see you back here at 7:35. I see Adam put the link to the 360-degree tour, the virtual tour, in the chat if anybody wants to copy that down and try it out later. All right, I think people are coming back. We'll get back to the agenda now. All right. So next on the agenda, I'm going to ask Dave Budney to give us a little update on how Journey Down the Clackamas River is going, which it is going gangbusters by now. But let's hear a little bit of an update and what kind of volunteers you might need as well.
Thank you, Gail. Yeah, just briefly, as Gail mentioned, we started on March 9th, and we've now had 3 successful webinars, with each of them with over 100 in attendance or more for each one, and then close to 100 or more watching the video after the fact, so those folks that couldn't make the live version. So I'd say it's off to a very good start, but I think we can do better. So, I hope we can get more outreach to folks that might be interested in particular topics. So for example, what I usually do before each webinar is I'll send an email out to 90 to 100 friends, just letting them know what the webinar is going to be about, why I think it's important for them to listen in if they can. So if folks like yourselves, whether it's family or friends or whatever, if you are interested in a particular topic and you want others to get informed about it, feel free to just drop them a note with the link to our registration page, and Adam will take care of the rest, or Adam's fancy setup will take care of the rest. And as far as volunteers, as Gail mentioned, we have basically several volunteer types of duties. One is to moderate, and Gail and Liz and I have been doing some moderating, and it's fun and it's very rewarding. And if anybody's interested in doing that, I urge you to get a hold of myself or Gail or Adam or Cheryl and talk about which ones you'd like to do. But it's real easy. There's a script. All you got to do is just read a couple of lines, and that's really about it. And then, but it's important for everybody, I think, to get involved in that. And like I say, it's pretty rewarding. Second one is a person that ministers the chat box to assemble the questions that come in from folks, and try to condense the similar questions down to a common question, that sort of thing, which is fun to do. Susie does a great job of that, as well as Liz, and but I think we could use other volunteers there. Maddie's doing an excellent job writing thank yous for us for the speakers when they're done, so that's a pretty good task. I think she can do that unless I hear otherwise, and on her own. We have another one where we call wrangling, where we just a couple of weeks before the webinar, we get a hold of the speaker and say, hey, how you coming along? We usually have a practice session about a week before the actual webinar to make sure we test their presentation to see how it's going to work with our system, make sure everything's cool, and that's been working very well so far. And so I would say that it's going well. B, we can certainly use some more volunteers down the road. We're pretty set, in pretty good shape for the next several, but I think down the road, if you're interested in being moderators, I know there's a few folks here that would be excellent moderators, and don't be surprised if myself or Cheryl give you a call anyway, if we don't hear from you tonight. So that's all I got, if there's any questions.
All right, any questions about the conference? All right. Hopefully we will get a slew of volunteers after tonight. All right, next we want to touch on the OWEB board self-evaluation. This is something that we have to self-evaluate ourselves every other year, part of an OWEB requirement. You all should have gotten an email with the link to the survey. We got about 11 responses to the survey, and then something happened to the survey, to the website or something, and you could no longer respond online. So if that happened and you did not get a chance to respond, please let Cheryl know, and she will just send you an Excel file with the questions for you to just fill out and send back to her. And we're going to trust her to put the right answer, your responses into the survey.
Those 11 respondents, those are intact.
All right,
No need to redo.
all right,
Thanks.
yeah.
Do
but
do we, I'd like to know whether mine, I remember filling it out, but I just would like to know if mine was on the was received. Do you think you could let us know which 11 you got and which of us just either need to redo it or do it for the first time?
If you were able to complete it online with the link, you're
Did it
included.
work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah, we really want to hear from everybody. So again, if you haven't gotten a chance to do it, please let us know. Cheryl will email the survey to you, and we really want your responses on that. Next, want to talk about an award that CRBC is receiving from Oregon Community Trees, which is a statewide nonprofit that, well, deals with community forestry, basically. And so they received an award, but because it was actually an award that was received last year, but because of COVID, it was never presented to us. And so we have an opportunity to do that in a public forum of some sort. So we thought that we would take advantage of the conference and use one of the conference sessions to have Oregon Community Trees present CRBC with that award. And so we are looking for a date when there is one of the forestry presentations to have that happen. And I believe that went through the executive committee, sort of came up with that idea. So that will be coming up. I think we tentatively have a date of July 27th, and we're waiting to confirm. All right, next item, the stormwater standards. Water Environment Services is updating its sanitary and stormwater standards, and those have been, a public draft has been online since March 15th or 17th, I forget the date, but comments on those are actually due tomorrow. And I believe that Dave Bugney and maybe some others from the Issues and Policy Committee took a look at that and may have something to say to you tonight. As an employee of WES, can't really comment, so I'm going to ask Dave to bring us up to speed.
Okay, so just briefly, as Gail summarized, this was brought before us at the last meeting for the Watershed Issues and Policy Committee. And it's a rather voluminous document, one. Two, it's pretty heavy in as one could imagine in that particular subject. And so, you know, the bottom line was there just was no time to look through each and every page as a council by ourselves. But what I thought was very amazing was that some other watershed councils did apparently look at this quite in depth and came up with a list of recommendations to implement in the standards that they sent to WES. And so we basically have three choices here. What we can do is we could sign up to that letter that is signed by some other watershed councils. But I think if we were to do that, people would have to be comfortable with what is stated in that letter and study it. And there's to be quite frank, there's a lot there. It's not like I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean, anything wrong about the standards themselves. It's just there's recommendations in there to perhaps make them better, but not knowing the background. I mean, just being in this situation before as a civil structural engineer, without knowing the other side, it's hard really to balance what's the motivation behind the original document to begin with. And so getting back to the options we have here as a council, we can either sign on to this letter with the recommendations that these other watershed councils have put forth, if we agree with them all. Second option is to receive the letter that we've got, that everybody hopefully has looked at and say, okay, that looks great, and you guys do what you want. The third option is to write our own letter, which really is not feasible in one day or less, given the level of detail there. And so I don't know what you want to do about this, Gail or Cheryl, as far as the official response, but do you want to hold it up for a vote or a discussion or consensus, or what's your suggestion there?
Well, I wonder if, as chair of issues and policy, if you might make a recommendation and we could see if there's consensus to follow that recommendation. How does that sound?
Okay, well, I could just throw something out there. I mean, just personally, I mean, just my own philosophy, I don't sign on to something unless I really spent a lot of time digesting it and understanding it and all this. And so merely to lend my name to something that, although these may be fine people and all this kind of stuff. I mean, merely to lend my name to it, personally, I just don't do that. But, that's just me. And so, but if we all decide, well, that, those guys must know what they're doing, let's put our name to it, then that's what we'll do. But the other option, like I say, is just to receive the document and as a piece of information and roll with it and see what happens. And then the third option is to, like I said, do nothing, to write our own, but that's not feasible. So I would just suggest that we receive this information as good information as recommendations from others and leave it at that. So.
Yeah, Liz, go ahead.
I appreciate your thinking for, not signing on to something without like the more in-depth look. I worked in the stormwater industry a little bit, in consulting prior to coming here. And so I read through the document that was put together, and I thought the points were spot on as far as considerations that could be taken in addition to what they had laid out, or just additional thought of our demands. There's suggestions about how, maybe in this situation, additional thoughts could be taken. But I don't know, I was thinking originally that it is something that we could sign on to and support, just because it seems, I liked and supported the suggestions that they put forward. But I also appreciate the idea of not signing on to something that we haven't done the investigation on.
I guess, the way I looked at it was that, it's not like the universal law of gravity where there's only one right answer. A lot of things are arbitrary standards. They're standards of practice by different, council or, jurisdictions, what have you. And so, which one is better? I don't know. They look reasonable, but is that really the best approach? I don't know. So lending your name to that it's just a philosophical choice. And so that's why I put it out that way, but that's just me. But if everybody wants to do it, then we can go ahead and do it.
And if there are specific technical questions, by the way, I could answer those. I just can't give you my opinion. Are there any other comments?
Yes, and I think an overview, and I believe, Gail, you can insert some comments these would be innocuous. So the Clackamas River Basin Council received a presentation in November of 2019 at the start of the process from WES in developing, well, they had already initiated, but in developing stormwater standards. They had 3 different operational units that they were trying to make more uniformed standards, while also updating and making the standards more current and addressing a developing area that we're facing. So how to then recognize development that's occurring and protect our resources while being responsible for stormwater and the standards that they manage. I was trying to get at, Gail, what the motivation of why this document came into being.
Yeah, that's correct. We had different districts that have all been combined into one entity, Water Environment Services. So we used to have different standards, or we currently do have different standards in each district. So one purpose of the project was to consolidate them so every district has the same standards. And yes, it's also updating some of the, to be more in line with current practices and best practices. And also some of it is for new requirements that we are pretty sure are coming with our municipal stormwater permit from DEQ. Although we don't have that permit in hand, we have a very good idea of what direction they're going and what some of the things are they're going to want us to do. So the standards are in line with what we know DEQ is thinking.
What would have been handy, I'm thinking, is maybe this happened before I was even involved, but it looked like some of these other, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it looked like some of these other watershed councils maybe had met or were talking about this, over time. I mean, there's a lot of thought put into those recommendations. So clearly, somebody spent, or a group of somebody spent a lot of time thinking about this. And, to me, that's a whole level different than what we're looking at right now as our organization. And maybe, had we been brought onto this with these other guys and met with them and talked with them, then I think I would personally feel a whole lot more comfortable signing on to something that, I got to think that Wes hired a very competent consultant to begin with. They must have come up with the rationale, not that everybody's perfect, but they must have come out with good reasons for what they wrote. And so, that's what I'm trying to reconcile is, what's going on here.
Yeah, the presentations were given all around the same time. As Cheryl said, they came to CRBC in November 2019. And the North Clackamas Watersheds Council, they actually have a stormwater committee. So like we have an issues and policy committee, they've got a committee solely focused on stormwater. And that group really tracked it, followed it, apparently read the entire document. And they may have had additional discussions with West staff. I'm not sure if they did after that initial presentation. But yes, they've been following it very closely. Dave Albrecht, you're on mute. Looks like you're trying to tell us something important.
Uh-oh, still muted.
Dave Albrecht, you're still muted. I'm not sure if you're trying to talk to us. Okay, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. If I recall that the 19
Presentation.
this is discussion of the thing. And at the time, it appeared, my recollection is it was very heavily fought by the three organizations, and there's a lot of politics involved in it. Is there still a lot of politics in this particular decision, Gail, or have everybody got together and keep singing Kumbaya?
I'm not aware of politics. It's a pretty technical document. So
Yeah.
unless there's something going on that I'm not aware of, which is very possible.
Okay, then, yeah, I remember they brought the charts. And they hadn't made a decision as to what they wanted to do. And have they made a decision as to what they want to do?
Yeah, that's what's in this document is what we are proposing as our new standards. Yep.
Okay, but was the construction built into that?
Well, it does include stormwater standards for development and redevelopment. So yeah.
That would affect the way you're redesigning your stormwater dam.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I just remember the briefing.
Okay.
What is this?
So David David Bugney has recommended that I'll say this for you, Gail, for the moment, that we acknowledge that we've received information. I can send a thank you to Nikki Wick for sharing their lengthy comment letter. And at this time, we are not prepared to sign on, if that's where we're going to go.
This is Maddie. I agree with Dave. I don't think, I'm not comfortable with us signing something that we don't really understand. It sounds like it's probably a good thing, but there must be, as you said, a letter, something where we can show respect for their work, but without being an actual signer. That's what I would be comfortable doing.
And this is Renee. I just want to say that because I'm on the West Advisory Board, I need to recuse myself from any vote on this.
All right, is there any further comment? It sounds as if we have consensus to acknowledge the letter, thank Nikki Wick for their work, but not actually sign on to it then. Anybody have a question or a comment opposed to that?
No.
No, I would just go on.
Consistent with what we've done before.
Okay.
And I would just go on to say that they're clearly both of these documents, whether it's this, 500-page standard or the letter, are both quality documents. There's no doubt, but it's just, to me, being involved in this process, it's just, I think somebody needs to drill in a little deeper before I would be comfortable putting my name to something.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What are the ramifications of signing it or not signing it?
Well, there really aren't too many ramifications to not signing it. I guess the only ramifications I could think of, if we decided to sign it and then maybe found out more information that maybe there's something in there we didn't agree with, the board did not agree with after all. I don't know.
Be held to it then. If we
Yeah.
sign it. Yeah, gotcha.
And, I just glossed through it, but, somebody was asking about politics. I mean, to be quite frank, there's politics in everything. You can't get away from politics. And so there is politics in that document. I personally agree with a lot of what's in it, but the other people wouldn't agree with me, and so I think that there's certainly things that if you look in that document there's politics in there.
Okay. Any further comments before we move on this? Sounds like we're still in agreement. Okay. I will take the silence as consensus. All right, next on our agenda, we had something come up from Oregon Department of State Lands. They are revising their essential fish habitat maps, which the essential fish habitat has ramifications for permits and what's allowed as far as removal and fill and doing work in streams. So there was I believe a call that went out. Their new map, updated map, was also open for public comment. And again, I don't think we had enough time to get back with our committee and actually review it. But David Bugney had a chance to take a look at it and offered some of his own comments from Eagle Creek because he's so familiar with it. So his comments are on pages 23 to 28 of your packet. And Dave, is there something you'd like to say about that process?
Yeah, I think thanks for mentioning that, Gail. I think it's important to just briefly go over this because it all started from a really good email from Cheryl. She just forwarded this email to all of us about that this was going on. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just check it out for our area, and so I clicked on the map and thought, oh my God, they've got so many errors and this thing is incredible. So I wrote that letter that you see in our packet of all the errors that were there and said, you really need to do something about this to the Division of State Lands. So I got an email back, which is also in there from a guy at Division State Lands, a really cool email back, said, okay, thank you for this. We're going to investigate all this. And then he called me and said, yeah, we realize that there's some issues here. And I said, well, I really think we need to have some sort of a powwow with the ODFW so that you realize that I'm just not some, some hillbilly out in the middle of nowhere spouting stuff. And so they talked to Dave Stewart and some others at ODFW and agreed that there's these things that need to be done. And so they contacted me again to find out a little bit more detail about what they can do. And the point of all this is that, those poor folks are so overworked and understaffed, like most of our other state agencies, that they can't be know-alls for everything. And so I think that this is a good point, that they should rely on folks like us that are active in the watersheds to point and that live in these areas and that hike and do whatever else, fish, that we should bring to their attention obvious things that really they should have the best facts. I mean, Trump's gone. We should be living in the world of real facts again. And so this is a good point to demonstrate that, yeah, I know nothing about Clear Creek, so if there was somebody that was able to look at Clear Creek, they may come up with similar issues that would just help improve this data set so that in the future, when very critical decisions, as Gail just mentioned about permitting for whether it's, putting gravel or whatever it is in the water or modifying our waterways, that they have the best data out there. And so that was the whole point of this. And so hopefully when they go through this next iteration, that we as an organization will be given more time to be able to be notified, so that then Cheryl can let us all know. And that way other folks can also dig into this for your watershed so that you can make your watershed better, so that somebody doesn't do something wrong because they didn't have the right information.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to look into that and to do it, David. It is possible to have an impact on these requirements and these maps when they come out, but it does take a lot of dedication and time to look into it. Okay, just want to point out page 29 has the list of all of our upcoming council meetings. So please make sure those are on your calendar. And on page 30, we have a fantastic opportunity that just fell in our lap because of somebody who happens to be friendly with Bill Monroe, who works for the Oregon Beverage Recycling Cooperative. And they have periodically give donations, and we are just lucky enough to have gotten a $2,500 donation from this group. We discussed it at executive committee and would like to use that $2,500 to put towards the conference Journey Down the Clackamas, because we are seeking more funding to fill some funding gaps there. So that is number one. And then the second thing is that we have an opportunity, if the board would like, to also be to be registered as a nonprofit that can get continued funding through what they call their Blue Bag program. And it's an ongoing recycling program where you can buy blue bags and you put all your cans and bottles in those bags. And when you bring those in for return, you have a code on the bag that the proceeds from those cans and bottles will go to Clackamas River Basin Council. So if people think that they would participate in that, we can also join that. So I guess, let's see, the executive committee approved or suggested that we use the donation to support Journey Down the Clackamas. I guess we need to make sure the board agrees with that. Is there any discussion about that? Okay, I'll take your silence as consensus to put the $2,500 towards our conference. And then the second item, executive committee said to investigate with the full council whether there is interest in a blue bag program. Any comments on that?
So for your comments, how many of you would use them?
Can you just, for us, For me, that lives out in I don't know what a blue bag is. So can you just briefly explain for idiots like me what a blue bag is and where would you find these things and how would they would help us out?
CRBC would gain a supply of blue bags and we can distribute them with a sticker that would identify CRBC. There are different bottle drop areas. The one that I'm familiar with would be up by Fred Meyer off of Highway 213 as a bottle drop. And we can investigate all the different locations where you could take your blue bag. You wouldn't return it to CRBC, but you would deposit it at the bottle drop location closest to you or at your location of convenience. And then based on the identifier of the bag on the bag, CRBC would be credited with the deposits that
Say it a
accumulate
different way.
as
It's
a
just like the
fundraiser.
green bag. Yes, Cheryl?
Yes, you're correct, Doug.
It's just a different colored bag and you'd use a different sticker rather than the one for your own account.
Yes.
So this is for your own personal bottles instead of returning them, you know, for your own credit, you would just do it this way, or
You'd use the different sticker and it would be credited to the CRBC instead of to your own account.
Right. Okay. Now, what about like we were involved in a rather lengthy litter pickup for, you know, the Clackamas thing several times a year. Can we put the bottles and cans that we find in those in this as well, or is that
Perfect. Yes, that's
Oh
a
yeah,
good
you could
use of
even
it.
raid the dumpster down at the boat ramp and see if anybody else threw beer cans away, I suppose.
But given all,
Brilliant, Doug.
I'd be all in on this. That'd be great. Yeah.
All right, well, I saw a few hands go up. If that's okay, it sounds like there are people who are interested and we can go ahead and tell them we'd like to join. Unless anybody has a comment or opposition, any comments otherwise?
Well, we have an account, Green Bag, of course. And so there's about a half a dozen green bags out there. If you do this fairly promptly, if it works out and you get the stickers, can you actually stick your sticker on a green bag and go into your account? That's a question to ask them.
Thank you.
Or do
I'll
I have
ask.
to get the blue bags and dump them in a blue bag?
You could put the green bag inside the blue bag. I'll ask that question if you can just put the sticker right over the other one.
I haven't put my stickers on yet.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right, we'll get an answer to that. So that's great. We're gonna be partnering with the Oregon Bottle Drop. Okay, so
Thank you all.
yeah, that's all I have for new business. We're running a little behind schedule, but let's get the staff reports, and I guess I'll just have to ask staff to be a little bit on the brief side if you can.
Okay, staff reports begin on page, where are we? 35. So I hope that those of you who received the report electronically are able to journey through a couple of the links, also credited for the most part to Adam as well for creating videos. They're all very good. There's a video related to the Replant the Riverside and a work party. It captures a work party, but it also captures planting that was done by one of our reforestation crews, Diego Franco, and includes commentary from Ari Sindel and Adam. And then what is consistent in these reports from me would be an updates on various grant programs. So I won't need to go into that at all for you. All I'll add is that it looks like we're going to be over 6,000 for Journey Down the Clackamas contributions. That includes what was just approved with the bottle drop. And our OWEB wildfire recovery grants that are being submitted by partners will bring in, it appears as though we'll be receiving roughly $80,000 with about 60,000 for salvage log transport. And that's all dependent on where those salvage logs get freed up, because that situation is being worked out by federal and state governments for us, state as well as county governments for us right now. So that'll be an ongoing update for you all to hear, but we're excited about the commitment and support we are receiving from those entities to make use of hazard and endangered logs for future restoration projects. So that all sounds like there shouldn't be any confusion, doesn't it? Well, there is, because there needs to be a work around typical authorizations where the board feet are valuable right now for commercial uses. And that's part of what's being worked out right now for then what can be contributed, donated for future restoration projects. That's what I'd like to share with you tonight, and we'll continue to give you updates. Our next page report, page 36, is from our field staff, Liz Gilliam and Ari Sindel.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start at the top there, that we've done replanting post-construction at Eagle Creek and Cazadero North using the Habitat Fund, and that we have some weed treatments being planned for both Sebin Creek and Kingfisher. There has been a little bit of back and forth about Kingfisher, but just planning some pre-treatments out there before construction happens. A lot of fire response and that being coordinated with Replant the Riverside has been going on. We've been able to use funds and donations and trees being given to us by all sorts of sources. So it's been absolutely amazing. And we've helped out something just off at the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it's around 8 separate landowners that we've worked with. And we just last week did some hydro seeding, which was pretty exciting to get a burned hillside that was pretty bare and pretty steep, revegetated very quickly. With CRISP and with weed maintenance in general, that's something that is still ongoing, and I'm going to be doing a lot of planning starting tomorrow, Monday, next week, and making sure that our crews are going to be heading out there to start with spring weed treatments. And with the culvert removal, there isn't much new to report about that, but I believe we'll have Dave Stewart out during the drier months to take a look at how things turned out, how the first rainy season went post-construction. And I'll turn it over to Liz.
You just double hit that, Liz, so you're still muted. Oh, there.
I just learned that you can hit the space bar to mute and unmute, but you can't hold it down because it'll just double up. Okay. So we're pretty well set, things are looking good for construction this summer. The Kingfisher project is lined up fairly well. We have our permits submitted and are hearing back from the permitting agencies that everything looks good. So we're looking on track for construction this summer, as well as the Sebin Creek Confluence project is also on track for construction this summer. We're still looking for log donations for that project. But right now we are going through archaeology surveys for both projects. We are going through construction logistics and coordination with the landowners and diving into those nitty-gritty details to get ready for construction during the in-water work window. So that's exciting to see those projects near implementation. And we are planning for our next biennium projects. So biennium 1 concludes in June 30 of this year, and we start a new biennium of funding for the OWEB FIP grant. And so we are planning the next round of projects to be implemented during biennium 2, and we have some really amazing habitat improvement projects that I'm really excited about. So we're getting started on developing scopes and cost estimates for those. That's all I have. Mhm.
A question, can you not get logs from PGE?
We have received some logs from PGE, but they don't meet all of the needs of the project yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but no, they've definitely donated some logs to the project already, which is really awesome.
And then Susie and Adam, if you'll put your attention on pages 38 and 39.
Adam, you want to go first and I'll pinch it?
Sure. Yeah, just kind of playing off of things already mentioned. Journey down the Clackamas has been great, and we'll have some volunteer opportunities. So if anyone's available Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., Gail, Todd, and I are going to be going over those roles in more detail. And it's, just really encourage you to join. Like, you get a sneak preview of the next presentation. So David and I saw the GO3, and it's going to look awesome. So just really invite your participation there, and thank you. And Ari mentioned some of the Replant the Riverside stuff. So check our YouTube page or visit our Facebook page to see some of the latest videos and photos. And I posted a video in the chat. And then really the only other thing I'll mention is that we are taking out an ad in the Pamplin Media, their Home and Garden magazine. So we'll have a full page ad in the April and the May issue of the Home and Garden magazine to talk about our pesticide pledge program and to encourage people to take the pledge and to reduce their pesticide use. And then they'll also write a full page article about our pesticide pledge program and the pesticide stewardship partnership. So that'll have, it goes out to 425,000 people, including all the Pamplin newspapers that are in the watershed, as well as a lot of other water drinkers from beyond that. So we're hopeful that that'll have a bit of an impact, and we'll get some more people pledging and thinking about pesticides.
All right, I'm going to get us out of here. So just plugging along with strategic planning. The DEQ and ODA have come up with their 2019-2020 pesticides of concern. It was a little bit heartening to see a few of those pesticides of concern from the previous year's drop to a pesticide of interest at a lower level. Disheartening to see other things bubble up. I do want to mention that that I am looking for someone who might be interested in helping with a PSP sampling event on May 17th with me. That would take place in the morning. You'd probably be wrapped up around 1 o'clock. With the sampling, we've moved one of our sampling sites from a very clean area of the watershed, which is Upper Deep Creek, down to the mouth of Clear Creek. So we'll be starting new sites just in search of more nasties. We have a Christmas tree placement volunteer day started on May 29th at Milo McIver Park. Space will be limited, so if you're interested, let me know and I'll get you on a list. And then Adam, we are online, yes, for the Earth Day weed pulling at Patterson on the 22nd.
Correct. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So yeah, Earth Day next Thursday at 9 a.m. we'll be meeting at the Patterson's property, and that's the family where we hosted the Replant the Riverside potted plant planting. And with the planting, we also guarantee invasive removal through spraying, but they don't want to use pesticides, which we're happy about. So we are inviting volunteers to go remove some stuff. And so we'll be volunteering there. It's on Cadenau Road, and the website that I posted in the chat there has the address as well. So if you want to tear down some ivy and pull up some blackberries and celebrate Earth Day, it's a beautiful location and a really awesome family.
And space is limited, I'm sure. So sign up.
Right. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you. Gosh, you guys sure keep busy. We have such a dedicated staff and creative. Okay, I guess we are down to good of the order. So I'd like to open it up to comments, announcements. We don't really have time to discuss the presentation we heard tonight from Chad Brown, but if people are willing to just kind of speak up and say in general whether or not you support CRBC partnering with Love is King, the executive committee is in favor of it, but we really want to hear from everybody. So I'd love to hear your comments about that or anything else you've got for the good of the order. Just go ahead and speak up. It's the easier that way.
I totally support it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dave.
I support it in concept, however, I have questions.
Okay.
Like, for example, how, what kind of vetting process do they take their folks through before they put them on the week or 2 weeks training, to ensure that there's a strong likelihood that it's going to be a good fit for them and they're actually going to turn out to be volunteers. And so just some kind of logistical things like that I'm having questions about.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, some of the other aspects I could picture how it would be great to work with, but that Operation Rome, I wonder what kind of volunteers, what kind of assistance we could use 6 individuals for, and that sort of thing. But definitely great presentation, very interested, and it almost brought tears to my eyes, his story about having a gun pointed at him in a backcountry setting.
And that was on the Clackamas River too, so.
Oh, man.
This is Maddie speaking. It seems to me the more BIPOC people that we can find roles for to appear on the rivers in our county, the better it will be. We surely can find 6 activities for 6 young people in our county, and just normalizing people of color being in our county, doing the work that many of us do all the time and our children do all the time, will be so beneficial, I think, to the ending the systemic racism that we're also aware of now. So I highly support finding something that we can do with this program. And it might feel in the beginning like we're bending over backwards, but in the end, we're going to be beneficiaries of this normalization, which I think is what this would help to provide for our county.
And the other thing too that we could maybe think about is, on the journey down the Clackamas, we do have a class toward the end of the year or the end of the program assigned to, justice, diversity, and social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all that. And I think this might be something maybe we could talk to Chad about and see how he might be able to integrate some of his stuff. I mean, the guy's one of the most enthusiastic guys I've ever seen, so it might be worth at least opening a conversation with him, see how he could help us out. Because I mean, if we're getting the kind of outreach that we're seeing or activity viewership that we're seeing here, it would help their program as well.
That sounds like a great idea.
This is Harry. I think it's worth pursuing. It's the program's got some legs. He's got some experience. So it must be working to some degree. Whatever process he's going through to produce good candidates, it couldn't have got this far without. And each year will get better for him. And it just takes time and opportunity, obviously.
Right. Okay, great. Well, sounds like overall positive feedback and people are in favor of looking into it, definitely with some caveats and some questions. So, all right. Yeah, Liz.
Can I say one more thing? 20 years ago, I started my career in an AmeriCorps program, which is a largely volunteer program, and it was all based on salmon recovery and watershed restoration. And it shaped my entire career. It gave me a lot of really valuable technical skills. It got me very involved in volunteering, and a lot of the volunteer efforts were weed pulling or erosion control or riparian planting projects where you can get dirty. It's hard work. You learn the background of what you're doing. And it was just like an incredibly valuable experience. And so hearing what he is talking about really got my wheels spinning about how we could involve them in a lot of this like hard work that we do and how valuable that is. So.
All right, very good. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, well, thank you everybody for being with us tonight, for your time, for those who stuck it out to the bitter end. Appreciate your time, and please take a look at those volunteer opportunities in your packet and sign up for whatever you can. All right, have a good rest of your night, and we'll see you all next month, if not sooner.
Thank you, Gail. Good seeing
Thank
everyone.
you.
Night, all.
Everybody.
So long, all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.
Have a good night.
Did I come back?